welcome back. It's a beautiful Friday, and we have a very special Dive Lives prepared for you guys today, presented by Caleb Kraft. And those that don't know, I'm going to introduce him real quick. And Caleb Kraft is a full-time chief editor of Make Magazine, a publication focused on DIY projects for makers. However, for the past decade, as a side project, he has been designing, building, and distributing custom solutions to help gamers with disabilities. The Controller Project is the name of the beautiful effort that has been addressing the gap between standard gaming controllers and the kinds of super custom systems like Xbox Adaptive Controller, all of these using a worldwide network of volunteers in digital manufacturing. This is a prime example of 3D printing technology being used to improve the lives of people with direct impact on those that need the most. And today we have Caleb on stage to share his journey. So thank you very much, Caleb, for joining us here. And without further ado, the stage is yours.
All right, wonderful. This is really kind of neat and interesting. Over the next 15 to 20 minutes, I'm going to explain to you how being lazy, self-centered, and not particularly bright has helped me create all this stuff to help other people over the last decade. But also, I'm gonna test out some new stuff on you. See, I'm not a particularly professional person, and I've recently been trying to do some more professional presentation of this. So before I talk to you about being lazy and self-centered and not particularly bright, I'm going to take you through this deck of slides you see behind you with like actual professional looking nonsense on them, where we can pretend like we're doing important things here. So we'll start with that. First, let me tell you what the Controller Project is. And that is, of course, on this first slide up here. Let me see if I can just teleport. Ooh. So here I am by this slide. This is the Controller Project. This is a project that I started roughly 10 years ago, where I make custom gaming controllers for people with physical disabilities. It's been through a lot of changes over that time, but overall, I've kind of had a kind of narrow focus. And let me explain what I mean by that. This totally not made up graph here with imaginary numbers in front of you that you see is it's a representation. Let me explain what I mean. On the far right hand side here, OOTB is out of the box. This is what you get when you buy an Xbox, and you can see that the cost out of the box is virtually nothing. Most people need this, and the availability is really high. I don't know why I put it in the middle, but it's out there. It's everywhere. And we all know that there's an industry for accessible tools, things like the Xbox Adaptive Controller or Switch boxes and stuff. And that is what I call a full rig, which is way over on the other side. And you can see that the cost skyrockets there to set one of these up. The availability is nowhere near as high. They're kind of rare. And the need is much lower, of course, than people who use a standard controller. This makes sense, right? There's just not as many people that need this setup. But what I noticed was there was this area in the middle that is a gap in the industry. Let's say you were just missing a finger. You don't need an entire full custom rig that's this whole, all these different pieces that costs hundreds to thousands of dollars to build. If you're just missing a finger, maybe just hot gluing a piece of plastic on a button would solve your problem. So if you look here at this slide, you can see in the middle here, I have this kind of highlighted area where we have a high need. There are tons of people that can't do or have trouble with a very simple task when it comes to gaming. Many more people than need a full rig, and the fixes are dirt cheap. And the problem is, until I started doing this, they're not highly available. Let me give you a good example. The thumbstick click. You hold a controller and you have the thumbstick that you wiggle around, and you click on that thumbstick by depressing it. That sucks. That sucks for so many people. People with muscular dystrophy, people with cerebral palsy, people like me who are just kind of clumsy. I hate it. I hate the thumbstick click. Well, we can 3D print a piece of plastic that costs less than a cent, that slips around the thumbstick, that turns that into a button. So you're no longer trying to click the thumbstick without wiggling it. So that's kind of the niche or niche this fills, is that central area there in this imaginary chart with made up numbers. That's where the controller project lives. Now, the way I've achieved being able to keep this cost low and make it highly available is through 3D printing. So let's go over here to the next slide. Oh boy, I jumped way over here. So let me rearrange here. Okay, so through 3D printing here, we can achieve a bunch of stuff. Okay, first of all, 3D printing is cheap. It's so cheap. Injection molding through economies of scale gets cheap, but let's say if you look at this picture, any one of those parts, if I wanted to make it through injection molding, I would have to spend thousands and thousands of dollars to get the tooling done to make a mold. And then those parts would be cheap if I made millions of them. But when it comes to most of these things, I don't need millions. I need like 2 or 3. Now this one of the images, a specific example, I actually do need a bunch of. But in general, what I'm doing is 10 of something. And so something like injection molding doesn't make any sense at all. With 3D printing, I can print the part out for less than $1 a piece, and it makes perfect sense. So it's cheap, it's distributed. Once I design something, I can send the file to someone else or hundreds of people, and they can share them freely, and I no longer need to be involved. A good website to look for files is printables.com. That's where I share most of my stuff. So also, real quick, a side note, if any of you have trouble hearing me, raise your hand and let me know. I can't necessarily see you all from where I'm standing, but I'll try to keep an eye on you all. Just let me know if you have a problem hearing me. So back to the distributed nature of 3D printing is that I can send a file out, I can share it with the world, and people all over the planet can use it. This is in effect already. It's been in effect for quite a while, and it is proving to be more and more useful every day. And this not only allows it to be free for people to get access to, but it also allows me to save cost on shipping, effectively being better for the environment. A good example of that right now is I'm designing for something for somebody in Italy. It would cost me money, of course, to ship the item to Italy. It would also involve all of that fuel and shipping to send a piece of plastic from my office halfway across the planet to someone in Italy. That makes no sense whatsoever. Instead, I will have a volunteer in Italy, preferably in the same town as this person, print this item that I designed and just go deliver it to them. Much, much more efficient. The environmental impact is probably negligible to a point that I probably shouldn't even mention it, but it sure sounds good, right? So, hey, let's throw that in there. And then self-installation. Self-installation is important. The fact that with 3D printing, we design these things to clip on and just attach to a standard controller serves several purposes. You don't need an expert on site to install these. Previously, before I did 3D printing, what I did was crack a controller open and solder wires in. So I became this bottleneck where you had to have me or another person who is comfortable with electronics crack open a controller and modify it. And that's slow, you need expertise, they have to ship the controller to me, I modify it, I ship it back. Forget all that, that's dumb. If I can just clip on a piece of plastic, then I can just ship that to you. You or a caretaker or an assistant can just clip it on and be able to do it there. Not only does that remove a bottleneck and make the process better, but it gives people a feeling of agency where they are helping themselves. They're not fully reliant on someone else to provide all of the help. That is extremely important psychologically. Also, 3D printing allows me to, like I said, reduce that bottleneck so I can increase my output. Let's go to another absolutely scientifically factual graph here full of numbers that I completely made up that don't make any don't make any sense. But the point here is you can see one side and the other. So before, when I was doing electronics, I would maybe do one project a month. I have a full-time day job. I have a family. I'm not doing this full-time. So I'd get a controller, I'd crack it open, I'd start it in, I'd reassemble it, I'd test it, and I'd ship it back out. It's maybe a few hours of work, but when you're doing it in your free time, it adds up. I was doing maybe one a month. Now that I'm doing 3D printing, I'm personally shipping out roughly 5 to 10 projects a month because I can just keep 3D printing these parts and sending them out. And if you combine that with the volunteers around the world, which we'll get to in a moment, the production is greatly inflated. So now that I'm eschewing custom one-off electronics and going to 3D printed, I have greatly increased the number of people that I'm helping. All right, that brings me to what happened after that. So I had tried, so we're here to oh boy, I'm walking all over. So I had tried doing volunteers previously in a few different ways. But when it came to needing expertise, there's only a few volunteers that are willing to do electronics work at this kind of scale. Once I opened it up to 3D printing, where all you have to be able to do is 3D print a part and put it in a box and ship it, I started getting volunteers from all over. And I started being able to utilize those volunteers more efficiently. This slide was made last week and it's already out of date. I'm up to 19 countries and over 100 volunteers. And I don't really solicit that much. Occasionally I tweet out and just say, hey, I need somebody in Italy. For example, I will need somebody in Italy in a week or two. And I'll get written volunteers. So I don't even solicit that much, but I end up with volunteers all over in different countries. And then drop them in, I can assign them to volunteers and get them done. Right now, this is providing me with a new bottleneck that I have to deal with, which is now I'm spending tons of time trying to manage volunteers. Not as easy as it sounds. It requires, multiple emails between different, for each volunteer, for each job. Volunteers have questions. There's an onboarding process. So that's a new bottleneck I'm dealing with, but I've still managed to increase production dramatically. Let's go into the process a little bit here. The next slide. Ooh, all right, there we go. So here on the next slide here, we see the process a little bit. What happens here is, I'm looking at it. Okay, yeah. So a request comes in, the client contacts me. I email back and forth with that client and identify what their needs are and what file that I already have will work, or if a new design is necessary. That's a process that's kind of delicate. You have to work with people because, what I think will work will not always be what they need. You really have to listen to people, and it's harder than it sounds like, because sometimes people say they want something and it feels like it feels like you might know better than them because you do this all the time, but the fact is they know best. Listen to your person that's making a request. Then I reach out to volunteers. I find a volunteer, and this doesn't show a bunch of emails back and forth there between me and the volunteer, but ultimately the volunteer prints the product, assembles it, makes sure it works as best they can, and they ship it directly to the recipient. Right now, that's my workflow. It's changing over time because there's things like quality control I have to deal with. I've been finding that, volunteers, printers aren't always up to the quality that they think they are. There's no standard for 3D printing quality that people have to be able to compare to. So they'll print parts that don't fit perfectly and stuff like that. So I'm kind of always evolving this process. So up next, the file library. This is really interesting. It's fun to look at. Right now it's hosted on printables.com. I've got this whole library of files. There are tons of files. I can't remember the number right now off the top of my head, but if you go to the Controller Project website, there's a link to the library. You can just browse around. The beautiful thing about this is you don't even need me to do this. People can just find a file and be like, that looks like it might help. They can get it printed, they can try it, and they might find out it doesn't help them at all. Or they might find out it's fantastic. You know, in this image here, you can see a few examples. That one right there with the Nintendo Switch Joy-Cons attached, it's actually sitting on a pedestal here next to the slide. You can see how that works. This Switch controls slide into it, and it allows you to play with one hand. That's actually a fairly popular file. I love the simplicity, and people use that one a lot. So let's move here to examples. On this slide here, we can see some examples. These are some of our most popular requests, except for this one on the bottom, your left, I guess, the one from Cisco. I put the names of the creators here because I think it's important to note I'm not designing all of these. I do design parts. I design a lot of parts. I share my parts, but some of our most popular ones are not ones I designed. They're ones that came from contests I've held or just individuals that did a great job. The most popular requests are these ones from Akaki Kumeri, who makes these single-hand game adapters for console controls. You can see some examples of those on the stage rendered in 3D down at the main stage where we started out. Some other common ones here are these little thumbstick extenders. You can see here one from Tim Key and a leg mount that you can see from Little Sil VR or Little Silver. These are pretty popular files. These are extremely common files that I get requests for. You know, a lot of the files in the library may never get used, or they may be used once or twice. Some of the ones like Akaki Kumeri's, I have a steady flow of them going out. They may not be perfect, but they are helpful. I liken them a lot to like running on crutches, you know, they're helpful, but they're not perfect, but they are helping people game, and that is the most important part. And so finally here, in closing, that is the controller project. You can find me and the information at thecontrollerproject.com. Feel free to reach out at any point in time. And that concludes the professional and serious talk that I'm practicing, trying to be a professional person. So let me shift gears a little bit and tell you about some fun stuff. And this is kind of how I like to frame it all, since we have a little bit of time left here. I like to tell people that the things that have carried me through this project and driven this project forward are the fact that I'm lazy, I'm self-centered, and I'm not particularly bright. And let me explain to you what I mean by that. Okay, so let's start with self-centered. Everybody needs motivation. I have people ask me all the time why I do this. It's a lot of time, it's a lot of effort, and it's a lot of money out of my pocket. Until I started receiving donations this year, I got a donation from Prusa, from Prusa 3D printers. Until I started receiving donations this year, I pretty much paid for everything out of pocket. I got some free parts from like Adafruit Electronics, some free controllers from anonymous donors. But for the most part, I paid for shipping. I gave up all my time to do it, etc. So why do I do it? Well, I'm self-centered. It makes me feel awesome when people see it and they're like, oh, you're such a great guy. It strokes my ego. And at first I was embarrassed to admit that. I'd be like, oh, no, I'm just a normal guy, whatever. But the fact is, this is a powerful tool. Having your ego stroke feels good. So you know what? I'm leaning into it. You want to call me a great guy? Fantastic. That just means I'm going to help more people. It makes me feel good. It drives me to promote this. In the beginning, I didn't want to promote it that much because I felt a little bit, like I was just promoting myself. But the fact is, that's a powerful tool. It's powerful motivation. For me, it's more motivating than money. And that brings me to the lazy part. Somebody give me a wave when you can hear me. Can anybody hear? me? Can you hear me yet? There we go. All right, somebody let me know what I was saying when I met up. Anybody? Anybody want to tell me what I was saying when I disappeared so I can pick up?
You were about to talk about the lazy part.
Okay, laziness. So I'm lazy. When I started looking around, I saw other people doing very similar things. Benjamin Heckendorn makes custom controllers. There's a company called Evil Controllers that make custom controllers. I could have set up a business and started charging for this. But the fact is, you know, in the beginning, I thought if I set up a business, then I have to have official support. I have to offer a warranty. I have to set up a website. I have to have payment gateways, receipts. I'm too lazy to do any of that nonsense. So I just did it for free. Okay. So that laziness drove me in the beginning to do things for free. Now that laziness drives me to run a volunteer network. I could do all this myself and keep all of the egotism to myself and all of the praise to myself. But the fact is, I'd be working all the time. So in the ever-ending strive to be ultimately lazy, I like to give the work to someone else. And I still get the credit because I'm like running the show, right? So being lazy allows me to run a volunteer network. So being lazy keeps it free and pushed me to do a volunteer network. And the final one is being not particularly bright. Now, this one I say as a joke, but the fact is, when we start talking about really smart people, they come to these problems, they think of very complicated. Uh-oh, I see. Can you guys still hear me? Somebody give me a wave if you can hear me. All right, so, you know, a lot of these problems don't need complicated solutions. Sometimes a little bit of hot glue and a popsicle stick is good enough to solve the problem. And there's no that I should let my ego of trying to be smart and come up with some complicated solution get in the way. And by keeping things simple, I've managed to grow this much faster than if I spent all of my time trying to prove what a great designer I am of elegant, complicated things, right? So you should strive to be self-centered, lazy, and not particularly bright whenever it comes to things that are benefiting society as a whole. At least that's my opinion. And that's how it applies to this project. All right. That's it. That's my my whole spiel. So we've got tons of time. I'm sure Matthias has more info for you. But if you have any questions or if you want to look around at some of these files, let's do that for a while. This one down here from Akaki Kumari down here on the main stage is easily the most requested file. And it is also very complicated and very smart. But they don't have to be, because the second most requested file is that one up there of the Nintendo Switch, which is insanely simple. So this is fantastic. It's great work by Akaki. He designed one, and I sent him all the money that I had fundraised and more. I think I've sent him a total of, about $1,000 so far, just to keep putting these out and sharing them for free to the public. They're very elegant. They snap on. They don't modify the controller at all. So if your controller breaks, you can throw it on a new controller. They cost maybe $1 in materials, but they are kind of complicated to put together. And they require your printer be dialed in perfectly. I have 7 or 8 printers, and only 3 of them print this to where it works right off of the printer without having to sand a bunch of parts.
Hello, Caleb, can you hear me?
Yes.
I have a question. If someone wants to join this volunteer network, how does someone do it? How do they contact you, and what are the requirements to join this volunteer network?
Well, since I'm incredibly lazy, the requirements are simply that you email me and you're in the network. However, what I do is I often recommend people print this file from the, I'm pointing here and that doesn't help anybody because you can't see it. The file I'm standing by, that is the single hand controller, I recommend people print this on their 3D printer and try assembling it and see if the parts move smoothly, and that will tell you if your printer is ready. And like I said, not all of my printers are ready. I've been doing this for years. Sometimes the parts don't quite snap together, or they do snap together, but they don't move completely freely. And I do not want to send that to a client because that won't help them, you know? So I'm lazy enough, all you have to do is email me. You can go to thecontrollerproject.com and I'll add you to my list. The list, as you can imagine, with over 100 people and only doing 10 jobs a month, of which I take care of the bulk of those, I only reach out to volunteers occasionally right now because it is time consuming, but I'm happy to put you in the list.
Yeah, I asked because I'm based in Colombia, and I know a couple of people working directly with 3D printers, and also a couple of other people with a need for an adaptation for their controllers. So, seeing that as I am located in South America, not exactly in the US, I'm guessing the work here would be through volunteers, right?
Correct. Although all of the work there would be through volunteers, and I would love to have a volunteer in Colombia, especially if you already know of people that need stuff. You know, back to the laziness, I would love to put you into my workflow, and I would happily talk with these people and assign the jobs to you. But the fact is, you don't even need me. You can go to the library, you can find the parts, you can communicate with the people and get them the parts. I don't need to be involved. However, I would be happy to be involved since I do this already and I'm used to these communications. Not everybody is comfortable with that. I'm very happy to do that communication. But it is not totally necessary if you feel comfortable just reaching out to the people and printing the things for them directly.
Okay, I understand.
Ultimately, just email me, go to thecontrollerproject.com. On the page where you volunteer, there's a link you can do, or you can just email me at hello@calebkraft.com. My name is spelled out on the slide up here at the front of the stage. So you can just email hello@calebkraft.com, and I will work with you to get these people some help. Any more questions?
Hello, Caleb. It's Adriano here from Brazil, and amazing job, and you're fantastic. And you don't think about money, you don't think about business, and you're lazy. Oh, I thought it's awesome, dude. And do you have any volunteer here in Brazil?
I do not have a volunteer in Brazil that I know of. I'm kind of pulling up on another screen here my volunteer list to see if maybe I do have a volunteer in Brazil I'm just not thinking of. But I don't think I have any in Brazil, so I would be happy to have you on the list. A lot of the time, I don't have requests from these countries until after I get a volunteer, because I don't have a way of communicating there. My Portuguese is horrible. All I know is bom dia and obrigado and that.
And also my English, so don't worry.
Let's see here. I don't think I have anybody in Brazil. I don't have a lot of people below the equator, to be general. Most of my volunteers are throughout Europe, and then I have one in Puerto Rico, and then below the equator I have New Zealand, but that's not the right half of the planet. So yeah, I would love to have you volunteer, and then we can find some people to help.
Okay, great. I'll send you an email.
Caleb, can you guys hear me? I think my mic wasn't working for a while.
Yes, I can hear you.
Oh, awesome. Yes, I was mentioning first, of course, thank you for the presentation. This is so cool. And I'd like to commend you for the way that you presented. I think it was pretty mind-blowing the way that you you showcase your personal traits, which are usually associated with negative traits, the self-centered, lazy, and you come clear with that, and you completely tell the truth about your motivation behind this. However, there's a huge disconnect between the traits and the outcome, right? Because the outcome, in the end, it doesn't matter what your personality traits are. You are helping people, and that's what's amazing about this. And I think it's even more amazing with you like wearing this jacket and saying, hey, I am lazy, I am self-centered, but hey, it doesn't effing matter, right? I don't know if I can curse, but it doesn't matter because you are helping people out, and that's amazing. And that's what I really like about this project, this whole idea of being a network of people that are volunteering for the sake of helping and other personal intentions, but nonetheless helping, right? So thank you very much, and congratulations on the amazing project.
Thank you very much. I have to say, I didn't come up with that idea. I used to be an IT administrator in computers. There's an old saying that if you want to hire a lazy person to do it, because they'll find ways to streamline the process.
Yep, that's true. Yeah, thank you very much. And if anyone has any more questions, feel free to ask. Yeah.
I have another question. What's the preferred printing that you use? It is Prusa?
I like Prusa 3D printers because they are very reliable and precise. However, over the years, I've become friends with Joseph Prusa, and he donated money to this project and printers to this project. So I feel like I have to point out to people that I might have a biased opinion. However, regardless of my bias, regardless of how much I like Joseph Prusa and the Prusa printers, there is a fact that I have used Creality machines, Mingda machines, I don't remember the other brands, FlashForge machines, and the only machines that this file sitting right in front of you absolutely perfectly so that I can just snap them together are my Prusa machines. So that's a fact. Whether I'm biased about Prusa or not, those are the only machines I have that do this file. Now, all of my machines print stuff that looks good. So if you just want to do stuff that looks good, or if you're just doing a file like the Nintendo Switch file that's way up there at the back of the stage up on the pedestal, any printer probably will get you there. It'll probably do the job. This specific file in front of you, the PlayStation controller, is very, very precise. You're talking about 0.2 millimeter of a difference will make it fit not loosely. It'll make it fit too snug, and then you have to sand parts down and stuff like that. So I personally like Prusa printers very much because of that reliability and precision. But I will also tell you that there's other stuff out there that really has me excited. These new Voron printers that people are building, they're super fast. I could print parts out like 5 times faster than I am right now. I've not tried them to see how precise they are. At that speed, you usually lose a little bit of precision. There's a new printer called the Bamboo X1, which is the same price as a Prusa, that looks like it could be just as good, but it's brand new. So I don't know how reliable it is over time. But yeah, I love Prusa printers, but I am very biased.
Okay, thank you. I have one mini Prusa, and I confess that I don't use a lot, but after this presentation, I will play more with the mini Prusa. Thank you.
You're welcome. I can give you some tips if you want to email me. I use 2 mini Prusas and I print all of the time. So if you want to email me, I'll share with you just some quick tips that I use to keep them printing these controller projects all the time.
Okay, great. Thank you.
No problem. Any other questions? You know, something I didn't bring up that doesn't really apply to me, but I think it's very important in this space, is what Microsoft is doing. Microsoft is kind of changing the world of hardware in accessible gaming right now. A few years ago, if you needed a full custom setup, you had to buy what was called a switch box. So if you were quadriplegic, you couldn't use your arms, you only could use your head or your feet or something. You had to buy what was called a switch box, which is a little box that you plug a bunch of external buttons into that you can move around. And those were thousands of dollars. So Microsoft put out what they call the XAC, or Accessible, Microsoft Accessible, shoot, I don't even know what XAC stands for, all of a sudden, I've forgotten. I'm not particularly bright, remember that. So the XAC is the accessible controller that is kind of a replacement for a switch box. It's only like $150. So even though it's very expensive in comparison to a 3D printed part that is maybe $1, it is a whole different world of cheap compared to what it was even a few years ago. And Microsoft has several divisions specifically devoted to advancing accessible hardware for gaming, which is commendable. I think they're doing a fantastic job, and I keep pestering them to hire me. So if any of you have inroads at Microsoft, tell them to hire me, because I think what they're doing is amazing. And I wish other companies like PlayStation or Nintendo would put as much effort into this as they do.
Awesome. Well, Caleb, thank you so much. And I really recommend, if anyone has any more questions or any more comments, to contact you, email you, join the Discord community if you're there as well, Caleb. We can jump the conversation there as well. But thank you so much. This was a treat of a presentation. I really appreciate you coming forth and showcasing the project, showcasing your story. So thank you again, and I hope everyone has a wonderful Friday, and see you guys next week again.